I'm Nick Ashooh, and we at least have a little more information on some of the big names and whether or not they're going to play or not this weekend for the Commanders against the Falcons, Anthony.
I'm Anthony Armstrong, the original 1-3, and I know that there's a familiar face that's back there for the Falcons and Kirk Cousins, but it's Bijan Robinson that you really need to pay attention to in this matchup on Sunday.
Hail to the Commanders! It's the Commanders Squad. Everything Washington Commanders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the nation's capital. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Rally the burgundy and gold. The Commanders Squad Show starts now.
Harrison joins us now as well, out from Ashburn, as he's collecting all the information on all the injuries surrounding everybody with the Commanders. Look, they still sit at 2-1 here now, but we're going to look at Terry McLaurin's status, the reports on what that's going to be in terms of his quad injury coming up on Sunday against the Falcons. Let's also not forget Jayden Daniels still up in the air. We're trying to figure out his whole situation. But let's not forget that today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, so the report now is that Terry McLaurin is, quote, very much in doubt for the game against the Falcons this weekend, which, by the way, is the last 1 o'clock game for the Commanders, 1 o'clock Eastern, for those of you on the East Coast, for a very long time for them. David, you're out there. This is a question that we certainly had heading into this week. It was a question we had in terms of what could there be some nagging injuries that hit him early on in the season with all the time he missed in camp. What are you hearing now out at Ashburn at this moment?
Kind of part of this going through the training camp thing. Well, the understanding is that the injury happened on that play where he tried to score the touchdown, was trying to reach out. He's on top of a Raiders defender. Like, I don't know what you can do in training camp that's going to prevent that from happening, right? Sometimes injuries just kind of happen as part of the game, unfortunately. But then Finley, doing a little bit more updating from NBC Sports, finds out that the doctor that is a core specialist. And, social media is tricky, but we go down the comment thread. There's actually someone who says they got surgery with the same doctor. And then not only is he a core muscle specialist, but he's a sports hernia specialist. If Terry McLaurin suffered a sports hernia in the win over the Raiders, that's a little bit of a different story than maybe a bruised quad. Now you're talking multiple weeks. But, we got Dan Quinn here in a little bit under an hour looking to get an update from him on what's going to be happening with Terry McLaurin. But if all that is true, it might be a little while before we see 17 back on the field.
Man, look, hernia, I'm hearing this live from you. So my reaction is like, oh, gut punch, no pun intended. I'm literally about 5 weeks previously, I pulled a quad. So I understand that it can be a strenuous thing and can linger around a little bit. And it makes sense that when you're extending like that and then that leg gets grabbed and the leg can't extend like it wants to, and that can cause some stuff to happen. So hopefully it's not a sports hernia, but when you think about it, as the body works, the quad does, lead up into the hip flexors. The hip flexors do lead up into the abdominal area. So those things can be connected, but then it can also be fixed. I feel like this much soft tissue injuries are very, very tricky. Patience is key. It's a very long season. And I think that just the way they've shown the ability to spread the ball around gives me some reason to say, hey, let's just rest Terry as well. And that's probably why you saw the line go down over there at FanDuel, Nick.
Yeah, and it moved to 1.5. Commanders 1.5 point favorites, as you mentioned, in Atlanta. Now, so the Wi-Fi I know is in and out a little bit there, David. So we got most of what you're saying, but I do want to go back to that just because this sports hernia thing is now becoming a conversation that hasn't been a conversation until we've heard from you. So, give us a little bit more. Again, sorry, some of it just went in and out there, but give us a little bit more on sort of what this could mean. If we've got more, are we going to see a potential multiple weeks absence from Terry McLaurin now, from what you're hearing?
Yeah, so like I said, and I want to make sure that the grain of salt gets through. This is all very much speculation right now. This is not a report. This is not necessarily solid fact, right? It's just, like I said, JP Finley from NBC Sports kind of doing some digging on the doctor that Terry went to see and realizing that the doctor that he went to see is not necessarily, he's a muscle specialist, right? But he's specifically a core muscle specialist. And obviously the quad is not in the core. If you don't know why, go back to your 7th grade science teachers and biology teachers and have them help you out. But the quad is not part of the core muscle group. So that's a whole different animal, right? And then, like I said, And this is where it gets really like, listen, we're on YouTube. We can kind of play with these things just a little bit. We're not live on WSA 9 CBS, so we can talk about these things. There's a commenter in the thread who says that they got surgery from the same doctor and that he's actually not only an ab muscle specialist or core muscle specialist, but a sports hernia specialist. So that's where, you know what I mean? Now we wonder, is this a sports hernia situation, not a quad bruise or something like that? That's where you get a little bit more concerning, right? So again, if you're watching this live, you're listening to this later, like, don't get too freaked out right now. It's all just kind of speculation right now. But you know, if all the dots connect, yeah, man. I mean, a sports hernia, if you have to have surgery on a sports hernia, I mean, I think you're talking at least what, a month and a half before you can expect any type of elite athletic activity. And so again, I don't want to send people too deep off the end here, but I mean, JP making the initial connection, if that commenter is correct and those things all line up, yeah, I mean, this could be a multi-week thing. Hopefully, I mean, maybe this guy specializes in core, but he's just really good at quad as well. And so Terry's like, hey, he does really good quad work as well. He's just not known for it. I mean, that would be great. You know what I mean? But if it is a sports hernia, yeah, I mean, you see Anthony's reaction there, like this is going to be a thing if it is.
Yeah, you don't want that to be lingering around. I don't want to hang out. I don't like talking injuries. Like, I'm from the old school, you know, you don't talk injuries. You leave that to the coach. You refer it to the head ball coach, Nick. That's what I do. So let's get off of that. Let's talk about somebody else. Jayden Daniels. What about him? What do you got on him, Nick?
We got injury there too. So it's not like we're moving on from injury.
Yeah, but that one, we already knew about that one. We already knew about that one. I wasn't ready for any Terry news. I wasn't ready for that move. I wasn't ready for that to change. It's kind of like, I wasn't ready for the hook. Wasn't ready for the hook.
As David, as you pointed out, like there's still a level of speculation here. So we're not going to go too far down just because we don't know everything, which is the fair thing to do. Right. But I think one thing that we do before we look at Jayden Daniels' situation, the one thing we know with Terry McLaurin here that let's not say this. The one thing that I'm going to assume, and I'll let you guys do this on your own as well, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to assume we're not going to see Terry McLaurin against the Falcons this weekend. That's certainly how it feels at this point. So that being said, it now becomes who's going to step up once again, next man up, the cliche that's had to be used a lot around the NFL and certainly with this team too. Who's going to step up if Terry McLaurin isn't playing this weekend? Zach Ertz, I think we know whoever the quarterback is going to be a target, whether it's Mariota or it's Jayden Daniels. We kind of saw what they did with the run game last week. Running back by committee kind of feels like that's going to be an opportunity again. But then you look at the wide receiver position. It's the same conversation that we were having when Terry McLaurin was out holding in training camp. It was, okay, who's going to step up? Luke McCaffrey had that 43-yard touchdown reception last week. Is he going to be a name that we see kind of fill that void when it comes to targets? Does Jalen Lane get more opportunities, more than just a punt returner with the flashes that we saw from him last week? I think those are, and I'll be honest, I don't necessarily have a direct answer for this because I've tried to play this game and no one's really, besides Zach Ertz, felt like they've stepped up consistently for them. So, at this point, David, are we looking at a situation here with Terry McLaurin is out not just this weekend, but multiple weeks moving forward, that they've got to really now figure out not just what the running back rotation is going to look like, but then where the targets also go when it comes to wide receiver?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a running game perspective, I think that's your answer, right? And I got a mailbag question on my most recent episode of Locked On Commanders. How do the Commanders manufacture ways for Terry McLaurin to get more involved? And I think that's your answer right there too, is that run game, right? If you run for over 200 yards, you end up with looks. You go back, Anthony, to that play that they connected with Terry on that 50-plus yarder, should have been a touchdown, all those things. That play becomes or is made possible because the Raiders are stacking the box. The Raiders have 8 in the box. They've got a single high safety. They're pressed up in man coverage on the outside. Terry McLaurin is going to beat that, more times than not. And Marcus Mariota has the veteran savvy, even with the pressure look coming in his face. He understands how to get the ball out there, where to place it so Terry can go make a play, and they make that connection. That all happens because you're in the process of running for over 200 yards on that Raiders defense. So if they can do that against the Falcons and establish that, listen, Chris Moore was the Terry McLaurin sub, during training camp while he was holding in, holding out and all that stuff. Is he Terry McLaurin? No, but can Chris Moore, with his veteran savvy, his length and his ability, beat press man coverage and get open with a single high safety if the Falcons have to stack the box against a solid run game? Yeah, I think he can possibly do that. We've seen Deebo Samuel in training camp run some slot fades that have been very effective. Haven't seen that in the regular season. Luke McCaffrey, you mentioned. Ja'Cory Brooks, the undrafted free agent rookie. Look, man, Anthony, you can talk to this too. Like wide receiver, you have your opportunity to step up because someone else has to go down. Like this is your chance if you're Ja'Cory Brooks to show that not only was your Alabama hype when you entered college, but then all the excitement some of these fans have in you as an undrafted is real and justified. And it's just another week for opportunities for guys to step up.
It definitely will be opportunities for people. And I can tell you this much. I went to the tape because I got opportunity to. And I've been watching tape all night. I went and watched every pass play. I went and watched every pass play because I wanted to see what was going on at the quarterback position on how to unlock Terry McLaurin. And I think that number one is changing the mindset of where you throw the pass. There have been a lot of open receivers, but the ball has just went to underneath and check down spots. I've seen Five throw that sucker where he's kind of predetermined, I'm going to Austin Eckler. I've seen Noah Brown be open 10, 12, 15 yards downfield outside the numbers. So it changes your mentality. You have to change your mentality to get Terry to rock. But he's already open. I've been over here picking on Cliff, like get him to rock. He's been open. Let's look at the tape and really decide where the ball's been going. So I was honestly just saying, hey, when you do the tape, you look and say, hey, call this play, but hey, keep your eye on 17 here. If you get this look, he's showing that he's going to get open. Use your eyes to manipulate yourself. Because I've kind of done I'm doing my own project in saying that Marcus Mariota's starts can be beneficial for Jayden Daniels and changing the way that he sees the field and changing the way that he navigates the pocket. That's how you're going to get Terry open because he's been open. I've seen some one-on-one, off man. He's running a deep stop. That one should be easy. Turn around and throw it to him 5 steps and give him the rock. But who steps up in this game? I do love the name Chris Moore. I love his size. I love his tenacity. I love what he brings on special teams. And when you do those things on special teams, and that's going to lead to Jalen Lane, they give you a little bit more bones on offense. They give you a few more opportunities. That drift route that he ran off of the quick play action in the zone read, you usually see it to the right. This time it went to the left. So Chris Moore is a name I'm going to pay attention to because having that height and that size is something that a lot of other players don't bring, and you need to be able to add that onto the field.
You've been mentioning Chris Moore a lot. You've definitely had your eyes on him. I don't know. At this point, we might need Anthony Armstrong on the depth chart coming out of retirement at this point because they're starting to need some. They're going to need some speed. You got anything left in the tank? Stretch out that hamstring a little bit. I
told you I'm 5 weeks out of a quad pull myself, but I'll figure it out, man. They called me about week 10.
There you go. You pull the Roger Clemens, go like halfway through the season and get in there. That's the way to do it. And listen. We've spent all this time on Terry McLaurin because this is the most recent news, the most information we've got, especially with, what David just brought up at the beginning of the show there. But we still got Jayden Daniels' status that's up in the air, which as of right now, from what I've seen, David, and you're out there, you're at Ashburn right now. I mean, this feels like to me, it's going to be a continuous wait till the end of the week before we find out what his status actually is. This team has made a point to make it very clear that they're going to take their time and they're not going to rush him back. They're not going to rush anybody with injuries back, which is part of the reason why I feel like we may not see Terry McLaurin for a little while. That's speculation on my part. But when it comes to Jayden Daniels, this still feels very much up in the air too. But the good thing, David, with all of this is that that Marcus Mariota can step up, step in, and run this offense very, very efficiently. We saw that already last week against the Raiders.
Yeah, 100%. We saw it against Carolina Panthers last year. We saw it against the Dallas Cowboys last year. And, the Atlanta Falcons, I would say, probably have a better defense than 2 of the 3 opponents we've seen Marcus Mariota play against. But as long as he's making smart decisions and as long as this offense is scheming guys open the way they were able to, I mean, I'll tell you, Cliff Kingsbury's earning his money. You know what I mean? Without John Bates out there and using that eligible lineman, I think that worked out really well. We'll see if he can come back this week. We've already touched on Noah Brown coming back this week potentially. Like those are going to be opportunities for him. He's also got a running back kind of waiting in the wings in Chase Edmonds, who knows his style, knows his scheme very, very well. And who knows, man? I mean, if you need to go running back heavy, maybe you have 4 active running backs this weekend. You bring Chase Edmonds up and you activate him for the game, and you just tell the Falcons, like, hey, listen, you kind of know exactly what we're going to do to you, but now you got to come out here and stop it. And oh, by the way, you got to get your offense rolling against our defense as well, because our defense is going to be very aggressive and opportunistic. And that's why I kind of lean, man. I mean, you look at 2 of the 3 games this year so far, they've leaned on that offensive line. They've leaned on the running game, and it's not dissimilar to last year. Last year through, I think, like week 6, the Washington Commanders running backs were top 5 in the NFL in yards per game, yards per carry. They leaned very heavily on that offensive line as run blockers and on that run game early last year as well, while they waited for everything to kind of settle and get their feet under them. Most of that was the rookie quarterback. Now it's injuries. But look, if you got to do kind of the same dance to get your team, stabilized through the middle of the season, you got to do what you got to do. And I really like the method of, I mean, the Washington Commanders had fresh legs in the backfield all game in week 3. Chris Rodriguez starting us off with some power running, and then they brought in Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and he's fresh. Then you bring in Jeremy McNichols, then you bring Bill back in, then you bring Chris in at the end, and he's had a good rest. I like that approach. You throw Debo in there, and that's why I bring up like Chase Edmonds. I mean, it's kind of unorthodox, but you know what? So is the amount of times they had an eligible lineman last week. That was also unorthodox, and it worked beautifully. And it's just one of those curveballs that you can throw as an offense that, we have these disadvantages, but now because I throw you this change up, now I've got the advantage right back. And that's what Cliff gets paid for. And I'll tell you, these NFL teams that need a head coach, they're looking at these teams that are not only going through adversity, but thriving through it. So if Cliff can draw it up again, if what we think might happen happens, then other teams are definitely gonna be paying attention.
Just shoot. Would you let Cliff get out of the building, or what do you think?
I hope not. I hope not.
I wouldn't want to let him leave, because I think you got to tie it. You want to tie it to the success of the quarterback and try to ride that out and hopefully raise a trophy before the stadium is built down there at RFK. When I see this offense roll out, you mentioned the freshness at running back. I think about the youth at running back, because frankly, everybody else is a little bit older, right? Everybody else is a little bit older out there on the edges, and I get it. Like, we get a little tired from time to time, and we need to have ourselves reprieved a bit. So being able to just have the offense operate better, and I'm always big on self-scouting. Right, I'm always big on self-scouting, because the first couple of weeks of the year, we're always trying to feel it out. You're just trying to feel out what the offense is. You don't know what the defense is going to give you. Now you got 3 games of tape on Atlanta, so you kind of have a good idea of what they're going to do. And same vibes on the other side of the ball. So now, as a team and as a quarterback and an offense, you look at your own tape and you say, what am I doing? Where are plays that can be made? And that's how you can grow throughout the rest of this season. So I'm interested to see how it goes, and interested to see how Cliff really tries to address it, Nick.
Yeah, the last thing I want to think about is offensive coordinators or anybody else in this coaching staff leaving right now. Consistency really is the key, but like that's always something organizations that have success have to think about, right? It's like, okay, you've got good coordinators. Eventually, they want to get a head coaching job. And I actually talked to somebody over the weekend that's pretty close with Cliff Kingsbury, and he wants to be a head coach again. I'm not saying anything that's certainly surprising. I think we all can agree with that, but I think that that's something that this team's going to have to think about. But, right now, obviously, some of the bigger things they're going to have to think about are the Atlanta Falcons and what that offense brings to the table, and, how they're going to fill some of these voids, some of these issues, some of these injuries and absences that they're dealing with right now on the Washington side of things. So we'll look ahead to the Falcons, that game, what the Commanders need to do to win, and who is going to fill some of those gaps with these potential absences that the Commanders have going on their roster. It's the Commanders squad. And the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer right now. New customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And this is the beauty of FanDuel. I just checked it, was talking to everybody, guys, about this before the show. Commanders now just 1.5-point favorites. That line moved a little bit at FanDuel since the Terry McLaurin news has been out there. It's, so it's time to jump in now if you like the Commanders on the road. You got a better number here now at that 1.5 versus that 2.5. Props are not out yet. I love the props. We'll keep an eye on the props as the week certainly goes on. But if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com, and place your first $5 bet. All right, so let's look at, I guess, guys, at this point now, we play the assumption game to a point because some of this news is certainly not there. But you got the Falcons coming up this weekend. And, Anthony, you mentioned a name that really, I think, shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, Bijan Robinson, and what they're going to have to pay attention to here. I mean, we know the ceiling for Bijan Robinson. But to me, when I look at the way this Falcons offense has been, I get it. There's been some change. There's been some, quarterback coaching, all these different things. Just feels like Bijan Robinson has never consistently hit that ceiling of what he can be. We've seen the moments, but you don't necessarily get that consistently. This Falcons offense as a whole, I mean, it's struggling. They got the crap beat out of them last week to the point where Michael Penix Jr. was sat And then Kirk Cousins is out there, which, God, give me that storyline. Let me tell you right now, I'm praying we see a little Kirk Cousins in this game, just for the hell of it, just for fun. But Anthony, when I'm looking at this game, I see the potential for the Commanders to get after a young quarterback that has very little experience at the NFL level. I mean, Michael Penix Jr. played a ton in college, but at the NFL level, we've seen the bumps in the road. We've seen the learning curve that's certainly there. And with this defense, that defensive line, the pass rush, and what they've been able to do the first 3 weeks of the season, to me, one of the really important things for them is getting after Michael Penix Jr. It's disrupting that offense, and really the defense, again, picking up the slack for an offense that's missing some guys and certainly has to deal with some injuries.
Definitely need this defense to create some turnovers this week. You saw Michael Penix was getting a little friendly with the football last week and kind of predetermining some throws. So there are going to be some plays to be made. It's going to start all up front. I spent all last night, David, watching zone scheme, run plays for the Atlanta Falcons. All they were running was outside zone. They didn't want anything to do with Vita Vea. So I'm thinking the same thing is going to happen this week against Deron Payne and crew. They don't want anything to do with Kinlaw. So you have to be sound on fitting those gaps. This is outside zone. And you talk about the guy in the backfield. Bijan Robinson is a problem, all right? He's a human joystick, and you talk about him not reaching his ceiling. It's not because of him. I promise you it's not because of him. I saw a play. He was in the hole, face-to-face with a linebacker. Nobody else there. He juked him, jumped 2 gaps to the right, scampered up and found a way to get 5 yards. I don't know how he did it, but he did. He's a magician in the backfield, and if you are not sound with your gaps and not sound with tackling, he's going to give this team a hell of a problem. But I think Washington matches up well. The defensive line, big, beefy guys, so they're going to be able to set the edge. But when you run against a zone scheme, and I think about it going with the days of being with Kyle Shanahan, they don't mind if you are trying to be fast and aggressive upfield. If you create some penetration, you actually give up a gap. You'll create a seam where it could get somebody 1 gap out of position. And next thing you know, you got 88 out the gate. So that's the key about this outside zone. Be sound where you're fitting. The safeties have to be ready to fit. Like, they got to get down. And Quan Martin, he did it on the first play against the Raiders, but now you got to do it soundly because you're going to get a chance to tackle. It's going to be some crack replace, play action. There's so much going on. It felt so good to watch tape again. I was kind of getting nostalgic. I'm sorry, David. You take it away.
No, it's all good stuff. And I'll tell you, not only do the Atlanta Falcons not like to run up the middle, they also don't like to throw up the middle, right? But here's the beautiful thing about this, right? The Atlanta Falcons kind of now know everybody knows that. And so now they know you know. So now we know you know we know, right? And that's where the chess matches all come in. I'm looking at 3 players. I'm looking at 3 players this weekend. Quan Martin, you just mentioned him. Bobby Wagner / Frankie Louvu, right? Let's just put it, the linebacker that's in the middle of the zone coverage or whatever coverage look they have when they have that. We'll just put it that way. And Mikey Sainristil. Because I'm looking at the Atlanta Falcons to try to come out here and say, look, we know they know we don't like to throw over the middle of the field. So, Michael, we got to start throwing over the middle of the field, buddy. And this is a young quarterback. And if he's got that in his brain, what does that lead to a young quarterback? That leads to forced passes. That leads to opportunities for those players that are going to be kind of in that middle part of the defense to come up with takeaways. I go back to last week against the Raiders. Geno Smith nearly delivered a gift-wrapped interception to Jalen Holmes. Unfortunately, Geno Smith's veteran brain said, that's not a teammate. That's a defender. I'm just going to take this sack instead. Bobby Wagner gets his 2nd sack of the game. Michael Penix Jr., on the other hand, is not a rookie, but he's a second-year, very young, inexperienced quarterback. He might just gift-wrap that ball to somebody over the middle, trying to force that thing and understanding coach wants me to throw over the middle, coach wants me to throw over the middle. 54, 20, 0, whoever it is, they might have the opportunity to make that play over the middle. I'm looking for that. And I'm also looking, like you said, for that pass rush, man. Bobby Wagner doesn't get 2 sacks a game, a whole heck of a lot these days, right? Just because of what it is. For him to get not only 2 sacks in this game, but Nick, for both of those sacks to come on 4-man rushes, that shows you, I mean, Joe Witt Jr. was in his bag, disguising pressure, cross dogs, all this other stuff, and just given the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line fits, I think he can do the same thing against the Atlanta Falcons. Deron Payne as a 3-tech, Deron Payne on the edge, like they're just having fun with it at this point, just finger painting, just painting by numbers, getting pressure on the quarterback. I think Michael Penix Jr. is in for a very long half because I think Kirk Cousins is coming out in the second half.
I could see Kirk getting in there too.
Oh, I love the prediction. I love it. Listen, I'm all for the storylines. I'm all for any of this to actually happen if Kirk Cousins can get out there. Listen, I think, David, you brought up a really good point too, is when you're looking at just the natural pressure this team is bringing and they're not sending extra guys. I think that's really, really important and something that they can obviously take advantage of with Michael Penix Jr. out there. Darnell Savage was also signed by the team. Safety with Will Harris obviously going to be out. So that's that. Do we have any idea what his role is going to look like when, he's actually, I'm assuming, out there in some capacity on Sunday? Because, this is a team that clearly is also going deep on their depth chart as well. And it's not just the offense. We've spent so much of the show talking about the offense, but the reality is the defense has also dealt with its own level of injuries here to where they go and grab Darnell Savage just to try and fill a void at this point.
Yeah, Darnell Savage is a guy. I mean, I think 2 years ago, he was potentially going to hit the market. I wanted this team to go sign him. I've been a big fan of Darnell Savage's game for a really long time. So I was excited to see him get picked up by this team. I think, the easy button to say is like, well, he's here to replace Will Harris, right? But obviously, how fast can he get up to speed and all those things? I think in the meantime, Jeremy Reeves is obviously going to have a major role. Percy Butler, he also suffered an injury, right? So we've got to see what his status is. Could potentially get in there. Tyler Owens, he's the guy that they've been working with and working on for a long time. I've always liked Tyler Owens when he can just kind of fire forward. So that's certainly something to watch out here at practice this week. And guys, I'm gonna wrap it up with this because I got to head out for DQ's press conference. But I think that they're doing a really good job, and this is something that AP, like the free agent acquisitions they brought in, I think have worked out really, really well. When you look at Preston Smith and Chase Edmonds and now Darnell Savage, guys who have yet to prove that they are fits. The great thing about it is from an outside view looking in, like, when you look at this team, you look at what they want to be, what they want to do, and you look at the guys they're bringing in, you say, yeah, that fits. And I think it sounds like something every team should be doing, but we know from being around this business for as long as each of us has that that's not always the case. So I think that's a breath of fresh air. And I think that's what gives you confidence going into a game like, going up against an opponent like the Atlanta Falcons. Now, if this was the Chargers this weekend, I think the conversation might be a little bit different tone-wise. But going against the Falcons, the great thing is you get another opportunity. And look, the experience that all these guys are going to get these 2 weeks, Raiders and Falcons, could help you exponentially against the Chargers next week.
All right, we'll let David go. David, appreciate it. I know you got to head to the press conference, so he's going to head out and go cover that now, Anthony. And listen, Darnell Savage, again, we have to speculate in terms of like what his role is going to be. But, one of the things that, like, you and I talked about this after the first game and going forward, like, we may have to have a situation where the defense does carry this team a little bit more early in the season with all of the issues and we'll call them obstacles that the offense had to face in the offseason and early on. And now we're going back to a potential Terry McLaurin absence for however long that actually is. We're still trying to figure out what Jayden Daniels' status is going to be just for this weekend alone. I'm much more confident in the fact that they've got Marcus Mariota out there as the backup quarterback going in and filling in and taking advantage of that opportunity versus kind of the depth and the inconsistency we've seen a lot in the wide receiver spot. But the reality is this Commanders defense has done everything, or it feels like most of what they need to do. It hasn't been perfect by any stretch, but doing what they need to do to kind of cover some of the out of sync moments that we've seen from this offense and the catching up that they've needed to do and getting after the quarterback and stopping the run where they can. So, and this defense feels very different than where it was this time last year, especially against the run too.
Yeah, last season it was kind of hope and pray. Like, man, what side are they going to pick on the passing game? Can they stop the run? It was all up and down. You weren't really sure, but they found a way to stay close enough, and they continue to find ways to win. And similar vibe this year, you're going to have to find ways to win. And thankfully, they do have a seasoned defense, right? Some players and some teams and guys that are in there that play a lot of football. And they're able to hold things down for a little bit. Obviously, it's shaky on offense right now. With the way they built the team, the strong defensive line, they're cool. I think it's going to be all right. I think we're going to be okay. And that defense is starting to grow. I'm loving what Joe Witt did last week. And I love the fact that he gets to go against a young quarterback so he can get a little bit more exotic and try some things. Right? They don't have as many playmakers. Drake London's a good receiver. Bijan Robinson obviously going to be the biggest focus. But another guy that I want Joe Witt and that defense to really focus on this week is Kyle Pitts. Now, you don't see a whole lot from him on tape, but he's a matchup problem, right? 6'5", he's got speed, and they'll split him out wide, run him on slants and things like that. So just with the recent history of, how the team has been against tight ends, you obviously want to pay attention to that. But I know that this defense is going to get some turnovers going, and that's going to help, be your feed your point of saying they got to carry this team for a while. And that's the only thing that they're missing is turnovers, and maybe that one time where you just know you put somebody out there and they're going to get to the passer. I think that's the one thing we're missing from the pass rush, but that's not the type of guys they have outside of Vaughn. You know what I mean, Nick? So the defense is holding it down right now. They're doing it good here to start the season, but how they can grow and tighten up in that back end is going to help this, be that much more successful going on throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, and listen, a takeaway certainly would help give that defense, just if anything, a little more confidence, since that's been the narrative for the first 3 weeks of the season. Is just, hey, let's generate a turnover. That would be a nice start that's there. But again, not a rookie quarterback, but a quarterback with very little experience, certainly less than a season under his belt, less than half a season as a starter in Michael Penix Jr. That it's an opportunity to take advantage of. You mentioned Kyle Pitts and Drake London. We've already talked about Bijan Robinson. Like, the young talent and the weapons are there for Atlanta. It's always felt like they've underachieved in so many different ways, where you see the flashes and you see the moments. And I think the name that stands out the most to me isn't Bijan Robinson or even Drake London. It's Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was a really high draft pick for a team that certainly has the other weapons around him to sort of create a little bit of a distraction for defense. Like, they've got the guys, they've got the horses for this to be an offensive juggernaut in Atlanta. It's just felt like throughout the entire time that this young group has been together, even before Michael Penix Jr., it's part of the reason why, again, it's a lot of factors in here, including they lacked a quarterback until Kirk Cousins. And then after like 3 weeks of last year, all of a sudden you went, oh, there's Kirk Cousins again. That's what they paid for. And then it all fell off a cliff and they went Michael Penix Jr. It's just been this roller coaster in Atlanta, but man, the talent is there offensively. And that's always what scares me about a team like Atlanta, where you've got the guys, you've got the moments. I almost watched like the Dolphins, right? Think about the Dolphins last Thursday, where there's all this conversation about, whether Mike McDaniel's going to get fired, right? Or what this, they're underachieving and how this team has regressed. But the reality is the Dolphins are kind of like where Atlanta is. You've seen more from the Dolphins, where the weapons are there and it feels like at any moment they can explode. And that's always what concerns me about the Falcons. Even if it's just a week by week thing, guys like Kyle Pitts, guys like Drake London, guys like Bijan Robinson all have the ability to really make big plays, and those chunk yardage moments can really change the trajectory of a game.
It's the consistency, right? There's inconsistency on those young teams. Whenever you're struggling, it's whenever you can't put. You play golf, Nick. I know I play golf every now and again. I don't play as much as I want to.
Terrible.
Yeah, okay, so but every now and again you have that good tee shot. But then you duff the second shot, and then you put the third one in the water, right? It's you waste that's what bad teams do. They'll have a great one play, and then the next three when they'll just go punt it next time. They can't put those things together. And that's what Atlanta's been missing. I mean, whenever they compiled that roster, I was like, okay, they do have something. I would have maybe changed a few pieces here or there, but they do have a lot of young firepower, and they want to really try to capitalize on it. Raheem Morris is, he's trying to do all right with it. They got rid of Ike Hilliard, who was their passing game coordinator. I don't know if that's going to change anything with the offense. I saw some plays where they're just a quarterback pre-deciding where the ball is. Drake London was wide open over the middle. You mentioned it. He doesn't throw over the middle, but he was wide open over the middle on a post route. So that comes down to coaching the quarterback to see things differently, and that's how you bring some young players along. It's interesting. I just thinking about how teams get built out. Like some teams, you see the old veteran quarterback. That's why I thought they brought Kirk in there to kind of try to bring those everybody else along. But then they pivoted and went a different direction. So, hey, their issue. Hopefully, the Commanders can take advantage of it, right? And put a game out early, right? Take care of the business early, but also don't be like the Rams. Do not let your foot off the gas. That's the big thing. If you watch that game against the Eagles, do not let your foot off the gas. If you get them down, step on them. Keep them down.
It's crazy. And this is what pisses me off about the Eagles so much, because now we're in a spot where you're watching the top of that division, right? The Commanders are a team that has at least the potential to compete for, let's just talk NFC East for now before we start going the rest. We got a long season ahead of us. But, like, it's a different position to be in with this team. When we're talking division and you're watching the Eagles week after week, that's the really only other competition to win the division this year. We know the Cowboys are trash. We know the Giants are what they are, although Jackson Dart's starting, so who knows how much that's going to change. But so I was at a wedding Sunday. Again, most selfish thing ever. Have a wedding on Sunday during football season. That's why we did our show on Monday after the game.
I said congratulations to the couple, by the way.
Oh, yes. Well, listen, they're great friends. They've been together almost a decade. So it was one of those, like, are you just going to hurry up and get married or what? Friend going all the way back to, like, my freshman year of college. But I was just like, Sunday, what are you doing? You're a huge football fan. He didn't have a choice in the matter, clearly. But, it's a bunch of guys sitting there during the wedding, and we were the biggest cliche. My wife got pictures. We're sitting there on our phones, streaming the game, streaming the rest of the Commanders game. Good friend of mine is, and I apologize to everybody for this, a good friend of mine is an Eagles fan, so he's watching the Eagles game right next to me, and we're sitting there both then enjoying the Cowboys losing to the Bears. So it was one of those things. But watching the moment, you mentioned the Rams not just stepping on the gas and staying with what they were doing, like the things that happened for the Eagles to still be able to win that game. Like, listen, it's a long NFL season and sometimes it's luck, man. But like to see that and then the blocked field goal at the end, and you're just going, like, Drew Brees said it well, where he was like, he respects the Eagles, but their offense is really boring. With all the weapons that they have compared to like the Falcons, what we're talking about, right? The Eagles have a ton of weapons. In fact, in their offense in some way feels, in terms of the talent and the depth chart and the way that looks, kind of similar in some ways to Atlanta. Multiple receivers that can make plays, tight end, obviously a running back in the backfield that's a dual threat, all of those things. But the Eagles just find ways to win games. Atlanta hasn't been in that position. But to watch that, man, to watch that Rams game thinking the Eagles were going to go down and the Washington was going to win and it's going to keep that gap closer throughout the season, just I wanted to throw some. It's the middle of the wedding. I wanted to throw my phone across the whole crowd of people because I'm watching the Eagles find a way to still win that damn football game, man.
Oh my gosh, I saw it. I'm like, oh come on. I'm like, seriously? And I'm like, he's gonna take it to the house. Yep, there he goes, Jordan Davis. That boy took off. Blaine in the comments said there's definitely a luck element to turnovers. And the Eagles got a lot of luck going on for them too. But I mean, let's be real. One of the things that they have is that everybody is on one accord. Everybody is on one accord. They know what they want to do on offense. They know who they are on offense, unapologetically. So we'll deal with it. We'll talk about them later on in the year. But yeah, Atlanta just a little bit disjointed right now. I mean, they're going through a lot of changes, different ideologies. Sometimes the receivers don't look like they want to block a lot. You could just tell it's a different mentality. So they've got a little bit of rebuilding to do, I think. But I don't know. It shouldn't change what the mission is on Sunday. Go down there and represent and make that a home field advantage because I know it's going to be a lot of representation for the Burgundy and Gold Nation.
All right, you bring up something there I want to dig in more to in a second here. What really is the deeper issue from what we've seen with the Atlanta Falcons? And, of course, how that can also be exploited this weekend against the Falcons. Anthony Armstrong, Nick Ashooh, David Harrison left. You went to go watch Dan Quinn talk. This is Commander Squad. And of course, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else. And from footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every single model. And like players, they sweat every single detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, so you mentioned something here, and I know we've kind of obviously touched on how they can exploit a little bit when it comes to Michael Penix Jr., Anthony, but, the Falcons are always a team that just has confused me because we've spent this time talking about the talent and what the Commanders have to watch, especially offensively. We know the pass rush has gotten, they've tried to address the pass rush. You've got, Jesse Bates at safety. Atlanta's certainly has a lot of talent. When you watch it from a player's perspective, you've been in the locker rooms, you've been in these spots. It's one thing for me covering the sport and seeing. It's another for you kind of watching. I'm a big believer in body language. I know not everybody is. I think body language absolutely matters in life, in sports, in business, all of these things. When you look at the Falcons, Like, what is it holding this team back? Besides, Michael Penix Jr. being a young quarterback, I watch a team with so much upside and so much potential, but you just don't see it consistently with them.
Mental errors seem to show up just every few plays, right? I saw one rep where just the tight end stepped a completely different direction than the other guys. And maybe change to the zone scheme is something that they're not used to, or they're asking players to do some things that they haven't done as of late. I know just from experience, as a receiver in this outside zone scheme, you have to block, and you got to block safeties, and you're doing some inserts, and you're doing some slides. And maybe you haven't bought in all the way. And I think that there's just a little bit of ideological changes that have been shifting. Because, they had Arthur Smith, a few years ago, and that was a very run-heavy, scheme. You had, young receiver like Drake London was probably like, man, throw the rock, And then now when you get into this zone running scheme, that's a scheme where you have to be patient, all right? You kind of have to pay your dues first before you get the pass. Right. So if you keep blocking, then the play action comes, you can make some big plays off of that, but you really got to buy into it. And it seems like they're just not all there yet. They're not all there yet. It's one of those ones where Bijan is doing a lot of the work. He is doing a lot of it. And he's super talented, but everybody else is just not on the same page, and they're not elevating at the same time.
All right, so we do have a little more information. Like I said, David just left. He sees Dan Quinn, or he's there with Dan Quinn talking now. It's in the chat. It's up here on the screen as well. So Jayden Daniels is continuing in his return to play process and will be limited at practice today. This from Dan Quinn. That's according to him a few minutes ago. Like I said, David's out there. Daniels is doing everything he can to get back. That's sort of the response that you would expect to get. You're going to see... So it says they're going to take the other injuries through until Friday. This is something that's not uncommon for Terry McLaurin to get a second opinion. Dan Quinn's going to have a better answer on Friday. So this is kind of what we're looking at this point now between these three. Like I said, thanks to David, who's out there covering the press conference at this moment. Jayden Daniels will know more Friday, and it looks like Terry McLaurin, Anthony, we're going to know more on Friday. So we play the speculation game. We play the worry game. It does sound like, with Terry McLaurin now not practicing today, according to Dan Quinn, not a surprise there, but it does feel like this is how this is going to go, I think, a lot with this team. Unless the injury is definitive and guys are going to be out week after week, they're going to take their time from the recovery process, but they're also going to take their time making a decision on whether or not going to play. And you know this, right? Fridays are a big day. If guys don't practice on Friday, it's very rare that you actually see them out there for a Sunday game. Kind of feels like now we're going to sit, we're going to wait. No Terry today at practice, according to Dan Quinn, again, and then no Jayden Daniels. Will know more on Friday.
Yeah, they don't need to get out there anyways. They don't need to go and run around on this Wednesday. You're not going to prove anything. You're too far away from game time, and a little gamesmanship of saying, hey, let's wait and figure it out. I remember Bill Belichick used to put everybody on his injury report as questionable, right? Everybody was questionable. Backup, third string center, you know what I mean? He's like, maybe they will, maybe they won't. Everybody's questionable. And that's where Adam Peters came from. Right. So there's a little gamesmanship with it, but it's also smart. And then one thing I can say, since this regime has taken over, I've trusted what they've done with handling injuries. Right? We've seen their organization before where they just try to, maybe you try to put somebody out there a little bit too fast, right? Say, hey, we need you out there. And it's like, if I'm not at full speed, if I'm not at what I'm, fully capable of doing, it ends up being a hindrance to the team. Plus it takes up a roster spot. So if you have somebody that's healthy and you have somebody that can go out there and contribute, even though they may not be at the same talent level, we can make up for it from the other positions on the field. You know what I'm saying? We can make up for it in play calling. You can get past not having 17 out there. It might make it easier to attack the defense a little bit, just for a little bit until they try to catch up to things.
Next man up, I know is kind of a cliche, but it's used a lot for a reason, right? And it's why your front office and everybody that identifies talent, whether it's general manager, team president, all the way down in any sport. I mean, it's not just the NFL, but we're obviously looking at that from this. You got to be able to identify some of that talent, whether it's guys that are undrafted or on the practice squad or waived at the end of camp or whatever the case is, and getting an opportunity somewhere else, because you're bound to have injuries. It's just the way that the NFL works. It's one of the reasons why I've certainly said this to you. I'll say it to anybody. I'm not just saying this because there's an NFL player sitting right in front of me here. I respect every single NFL player trying to get as much money as they can and securing their future as soon as they possibly can, because it takes one play that can change the trajectory of anybody's career. And sometimes it's small, obviously, sometimes it's bigger. But the reality is injuries are a massive part of what the NFL and what football brings to the table. So we've gotten a little bit of an opportunity here, but I think we're starting to see more and more in terms of like in fantasy football, it's you win your league on the waiver wire. Well, in the NFL, you win by the depth that you have and the talent that you identify that maybe didn't pan out with one team, but has an opportunity and takes advantage of it here. I think that's the thing that we're going to continue to see with this team. And listen, around the NFL too, right, Anthony? Like you look and see all the injuries that we've dealt with. That's how Brock Purdy got the opportunity that he had in San Francisco. It was injury after injury after injury. The one thing I will say from a Jayden Daniels perspective, again, Dan Quinn saying today they're going to know more on Friday what his injury status looks like. Same thing for Terry McLaurin and a lot of these other injuries. We're not getting much more at this point, though. Terry did get a second opinion on that quad injury. The one thing that feels really promising and is in a really good spot for this team is not just that Marcus Mariota obviously looked good starting last week against the Raiders, looked capable, looked like a veteran, and it meant a lot to him if you saw the post-game interview where he was really emotional. I love that. But it's also, too, he's similar in the sense of the type of quarterback that Jayden Daniels is. So you don't have to alter your offense a ton where you see some of these teams, and I get it, it's easier said than done, but like they're not matching their starting quarterback. You need somebody that has at least a similar game, a similar skill set to what your starting quarterback has, so you can keep the offense looking in as much as you can, like keep it going in the way that you had it designed before. And that's something that they're at least going to be able to do, whether it's Mariota or it's Jayden Daniels against the Falcons.
Man, that is big brain right there. My son would say big
every
brain.
once in a while, my friend. Every once in a while.
Daggone 6, 7, all of those things. That's super smart, and that's key to think about because you don't have to go and try to go, hey guys, remember that one playbook? Let's put in this whole other playbook because we have a statue in the backfield and all that zone read. Now we're going pro style offense. You don't have to change it up that much. I mean, I did notice a little bit of difference in play call style from one quarterback to Marcus Mariota, but sure. I think I would like to see some more of that same Marcus Mariota's play call and aggression with the lineup and the commitment to the run. That should work with Jayden as well. Like to your point, right? You should take that game plan and say, take 5 out and put 5 in and run that exact same game plan. Don't go into it. And then mind you, I said earlier, you're trying to figure out what you are, right? You probably go all training camp thinking, let's try this, wide open thing. Let's see how we work with Debo. And frankly, it didn't work out well. I was paying attention to the point of there were empty sets, right? Empty sets with Micah Parsons against a rookie, right tackle. That's just not good ball, right? And they made those corrections. So seeing those changes, that helps me say, okay, cool. At least you're thinking about fixing some stuff, and they're gonna have things cleaned up. So I'm good. I'm feeling good.
You mentioned slight differences between which are expected. Jayden Daniels and Marcus Mariota aren't the exact same quarterback, but what were those differences that you saw? Because I think that's really important.
Well, I think that the differences is the commitment to the run and how they called the plays and what they called and the extra, obviously injuries to John Bates changed how they had to roll out, Trent Scott as an eligible tackle and the way that they rolled so many running backs, the way to get the ball to Debo in different spaces, rather than it felt like when Jayden was at quarterback, they were going to try to, take you apart with your arm surgically rather than leading with the run. It was more of a pass to set up everything else. This mindset kind of flipped it, right? Lead with the run, come out there saying we're going to be physical. That way it helps your young linemen out. It sets a physical tone with the offense, and then we can pick you apart with the pass later. That was the difference of how they felt like they were approaching the games.
Listen, they're certainly in a spot with certain positions that have that level of depth, but I think we all can agree having Terry McLaurin and having Jayden Daniels out there only makes this team better. I don't think anybody's going to go out on a limb and say anything else besides that. All right, final thoughts, keys to the game on Sunday, what Washington needs to do, and who we want to see step up the most with these injuries against the Falcons. It's Commander Squad. It's simple and easy here. There was no spot that I needed to do, so I just jump, get a little gap, and we get right back into this, Anthony. So, we mentioned, obviously, the Commanders are 1.5-point favorites on the road at Atlanta. Some people care about that, some people don't. You and I like to talk about that, so we'll sprinkle that in if we will. It's going to be a hard game to gauge just because there's so many questions in terms of who's in and who's out, at least for right now. And as Dan Quinn mentioned earlier, as you've seen, in the comments, as David's out there listening to Dan Quinn talk now, it's a question of whether or not these injuries are going to linger, what they're going to know on Friday, those types of things. But I really do, and I'm going to put the running back position aside first, and I want to look at wide receiver. This is a really good opportunity. I mentioned this name a lot. I love what Jaylen Lane can bring to this offense. It's, I understand as a punt return or kick return man, that is absolutely important. But I hope that 90-yard punt return and the flashes that they've seen from him, I hope this is an opportunity now for them to find ways to work him in, because Deebo Samuel is who he is. This means he's going to be probably getting more targets, maybe used more as a running back, had 3 carries last week against the Raiders. But we know what Deebo can do. It's the Deebo Samuel revenge tour right now, and I love seeing it. But you got to find some of those other guys down the roster and some of the younger players to get an opportunity here. This feels like a really great opportunity for Jaylen Lane to be used in different ways, in unique ways. And I think Cliff Kingsbury can take advantage of that, and he can be really a guy that you experiment a little bit with if Terry McLaurin's out, because the one thing we know, the Falcons defense, they're not going to know what they're bringing to the table because we haven't seen a lot from Jaylen Lane in this offense yet.
Man, Jaylen Lane is a great person to get activated on this offensive side. I remember when Brandon Bakes, old Speedy B, he used to take those punts to the house, and they just had to figure out a way to put him in on offense. And everybody was worried about, could he really run the routes? Could he run over the middle? And he did just fine. They would put him in spot plays, but I think you could use Jaylen very similar to how you use Deebo, maybe not lining up back behind in the backfield, but give him some of those designed, predetermined swing screens. You haven't seen any of those speed jet sweeps yet. Just find a way to get him the ball, because what's going to happen? Raheem Morris is going to say, don't kick that ball to 83. Don't kick it to him. Don't kick it in the middle. Don't give him a chance. Don't let him get started. So that's what you have to assume is going to be the game plan. And if they're going to take him out of the game on the punt return, then you got to find a way to get him active on offense. So I would say just start out with get him a simple touch. Just give him the ball in his hand just like he did at Virginia Tech. Like his route tree can expand as it goes, because obviously there's a reason, no shade, but there's just a reason that he's lower on the depth chart in that regard right now. Okay, and that's just what it is. There's a lot of vets in front of him, a lot of people who play a lot of football. So he's got to work to get up the depth chart in that regard and to run some more routes. But I think also you mentioned Jaylen Lane. Just throw the damn ball deep one good time. I say, Jaylen, hop in there and run a go. Seriously, let's just throw it, Marcus. Just let it fly one time. That's all you need, just to start loosening up the defense, make Jesse Bates think about some things, right? Everything isn't going to be 12 yards and under. So Jaylen could really bring some firepower to the offense.
That was something you obviously did very well in your career. Just like put in perspective what those kind of moments mean when you get involved in the offense on just a go route. Just go deep and we're going to get you the football. For somebody like him, like how much of a confidence builder could that be?
Well, I can tell you it takes a little humility for one, because you're going to get in there and he's not going to have any respect. They're going to probably play press. So if the ball comes your way, you got to take advantage of that opportunity. Let them know that, hey, I can run this deep ball, and you start to build your trust in the offense. But the other thing is that it's going to affect everything else on the offense. It's going to help open up some of those zones. It's going to allow you to hit more intermediate routes, seeing people hit deep overs. Play action game is going to be different instead of it being those quick drift routes. Safeties that are getting nosy in the running game. Now you got some speed to run away from those corners. So being able to get down the field, frankly, it's a superpower. And it can really just open up the offense and put big plays on the field, bring a lot of value. So used wisely enough, use strategically, it can really be key. And Luke's got a little speed too, but I think Jaylen is going to be the one that's going to have to bust things open.
One other thing that David just dropped in here as he's out there with Dan Quinn talking, obviously, Jayden Daniels is going to be at the podium after practice today. So we'll get at least, I doubt we're going to get much in terms of like injury update from Jayden Daniels necessarily, and they don't have to give any of that information out. You talk about Bill Belichick, he's just like, let me throw 20 guys on the injury report. And I'm fine with the gamesmanship. I mean, it doesn't make what we do any easier, but like in the end, that's the right approach, is don't give too much information that's there. But I'll be curious to see what Jayden Daniels has to say. It might just, like, I feel like it's probably going to be a lot of just the simple, hey, I'm working towards it. I'm trying to get out there, trying to get going. I don't think we're going to get a lot, but that is something to at least keep in mind, Anthony, is that we are going to see Jayden Daniels after practice today.
Yeah, I would love to hear from him. It's always good to see your leader get up there and speak a bit and, regain some confidence, and everybody's going to pepper him with questions, but he always does a good job of just getting it out the way. He's like, oh, you can talk to coach about that, or coach will talk more about those things. But ultimately, if he's not playing this week, I'm not tripping. You know what I mean? I'm not tripping. I don't think it's going to be a lingering thing. I don't want that to become a question mark. Is he going to be a healthy quarterback? Can he take the beating of the game?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be fine. Watch some tape, scout himself, see how to navigate the pocket. You don't have to run so much. Like, you don't have to escape so quickly. Like, that's some of my own self-study. Maybe I'll just send a link. I'll say, hey, man, I watched the tape. Watch it if you want to. I'm just trying to help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, listen, I when I watch Jayden Daniels just in front of the media, the maturity and the leadership that's there, man, like listen, it's at quarterback, you're the CEO of the offense, the CEO of the team, essentially. Like, you're out there, you are the leader. That responsibility is thrust on you. That's why great quarterbacks make the money that they're making, but they also hold the responsibility that they have. And you can just tell, like, from last year into this year, the way this team has really rallied behind him and treated him like a veteran. And he obviously proved it on the field. But yeah, like, whatever he says after practice today probably won't be much, but it's going to be the right thing. He's just so mature and so smart in these situations that I don't really worry about him saying something where, like, it's Aaron Rodgers and you're like, oh God, why did you say that's not going to help anybody with you saying that type of thing. So it is what it is. All right. So we obviously have a lot up in the air, which is one of the reasons why it's harder to kind of gauge what this game is certainly going to look like. I'll be honest with you. I think this is a close game. I think Washington wins by a field goal or less in Atlanta. And a lot of it is going to rest on the defense getting after Michael Penix Jr. They've done a good job against the run. You certainly aren't going to have to watch Bijan Robinson out of the backfield as a wide receiver. I like the Commanders to win this game. I mean, we're sitting there again. They're 1.5 point favorites. That's all we're talking about here. I think the book is right in the sense FanDuel certainly got it, where it's like, this is going to be a close game for me. Washington wins this game. It's a close one. It's within a field goal, which maybe it comes down to Matt Gay and a little more redemption for Matt Gay in this, but I think it's close. What do you think?
Ooh, a little revenge for the kickers. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go with a little revenge tour for Marcus Mariota. Right, he gets the ball. He gets to give himself a game-winning drive. Maybe it ends up being a touchdown, right? So I'm going to say it's like a 24-17, 21-17 type thing. Could be a close matchup. One of those things where you want the defense to just take it away, but yeah, maybe they let the offense hang around a little bit too much. But I think that Washington will be able to handle it. It will be a close matchup. But yeah, Marcus Mariota, he gets the heroics.
All right, and we'll be back after that game to recap everything that happened. Anthony Armstrong, Nick Ashooh, thanks to David Harrison, who gave us a lot of information literally in the middle of the Dan Quinn press conference when he dropped off of here. So as you know, at this point now, Jayden Daniels is going to talk after practice today to the media. Dan Quinn says that we'll have more information on his injury come maybe Friday. Terry McLaurin seeking a second opinion. It's not uncommon. They're trying to calm everybody down. Won't practice today. We'll have an idea on pretty much most of the injuries come Friday. We'll, of course, have Locked On Commanders podcast. David will give you a little bit more of that as he's out there. And we will all be back on Sunday after this game, where I think everybody that loves this team is probably hoping it's a 3-1 start to the year when it's all done.
Yes, indeed. Y'all be good.